Welcome to Conversations with Champions. My name is Johnny Randolph, and I'm the founder of the Randolph Speaker Bureau. And our mission statement is we help you to unleash your voice and ignite your full potential. Today, I've got a fascinating guest. He is a creative. He's a video game designer. He's a podcaster. He's an author and a whole bunch of other stuff. Yo, say what's up to my guest for this podcast, Mr. Benja.
What's up? What's up? What's up, Mr. Benja here. Thank you for having me, Johnny. This is fun. I haven't been on the podcast circuit in a while. I have my own podcast, but I haven't been on like another person's podcast in a while. So it's always fun just to chop it up with people from across the wherever.
Sir, you are a creative and a video game designer. I ran off a little bit of your resume, but I want to go back to the genesis, the origin. What was that igniting moment that you said, hey, I'm creative and this is possibly something I want to do with the rest of my life?
Oh man, I mean that's one of those things that happened when I was mad young, where
That's what I was hoping.
I wanted to be creative. I grew up in a family of very, very social and outgoing people. I'm more of an introvert. I'm
Okay.
not shy, and I'm not worried about hurting feelings or how I come across so much. But I am an introvert. I do prefer to just sit around in my corner, go in the lab, and do things. And as a kid, my parents were more social, creatives. My mother was a professor of music. My father taught art classes, and he was a painter and a portrait artist for the state of Florida. Did work for Florida A&M University. So they have this creative streak in them, and I guess my way of rebelling was getting into computers because as a kid, nobody around me was really into computers. The computer lab was there for when the teachers forced you in there, and then when you left, that was it. You just didn't go in the computer lab. They didn't allow game playing or anything like that. But I was in there like, you know what? This is great. I get to sit around here with nobody around. People are pretty much being quiet. You just hear the ticky tack tick of the keyboards. And, it was like, this is great. It's like the library, but different. I was a library rat too. And yeah, man, the whole creative thing just happened when I got into computers. And
What age was this discovery?
I started getting into board gaming, comic books, um, arcade gaming, just doing all these little things. But technology was kind of always around and there. And when the Nintendo hit, my mind was blown. I don't know if you remember the technological jump from like Atari games to the
Yeah.
NES, but having the side-scrolling graphics of Mario, then there was Slalom. I was watching the 3D action go on, Excite Bike, Mech, Mock Racer. Yeah, all of those. It hit so hard. I don't think people understand how hard it hit with all of these games and titles. You were just like, "Oh my god, they just keep coming with the hits." And I guess at some point it clicked in me. It's like, okay, all this other stuff is cool. Comic books, cool. Hanging out with friends, cool. Playing flag football, cool. All this stuff was fine, but that all went out the window once the Nintendo hit. I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. And I mean, I didn't stop and say that,
Right.
but my
But
kid
that
brain,
seed had kind of been planted like, oh,
yeah.
yeah. And I love hearing that. Now, since you said you identified this passion at a very young age, and as we grow older, we are influenced by our peers and people around us. Parents, you said, is kind of rebelling against what they had established as norms. I
Yeah.
want to know what kept this passion going for you, and you didn't just kind of deviate and go with what was the standard of the day or in your group.
Honestly, technology gave me power. Doing work for college professors. I started doing, and when I say work, I mean I was doing these projects based around computers and technology. So, I was printing out like color sheets for my dad. He was like, "Hey, we're thinking about these colors and this and that and that." And I had an early paint program, and I was like, "Well, hey, you can kind of use this to see, without breaking out all the actual paint." And he was like, "Huh, that's interesting."
In that moment, right? You invite the family up because normally you're in your room and they're like, let's get Benji down here to try to be inclusive, right? And you're like, nah, come on up and see what I'm doing. And you show them this kind of, at that time, probably something that was really revolutionary that they had never maybe even seen before. I want you to express to me, like, what was that feeling like showing them what you were doing and the look of kind of bewilderment or being impressed about something that you had created? What was that feeling like for you?
Honestly, and my people probably would have called me a jerk back then, but honestly, I was kind of like, y'all better recognize,
Talk your
even at,
talk, talk your
even as
talk,
a ki-
talk your talk.
even as a kid, and I was like, listen, as long as I get good grades, you guys will leave me alone, right? Well, pretty much.
Mhm.
Good. And from there on, it was just like straight A's, so they'll leave me alone. That was
Mm.
my impetus for. I know you like words, so I'm going to throw some bigger words here. That was my
I like
impetus
it.
for using for just doing what I wanted to do and making straight A's. They would just leave me alone. And
Mm.
it's like after a while, they stopped worrying about seeing my report card. They're just like, yeah, he's going to be fine.
When did it kind of become real to you that this was a viable profession?
It became real to me as a viable profession when 'cause I'd been talking noise about games, technology, computers long enough. My family knew, my neighbors knew, people at the comic book store down the street knew. You know, I'd walk in the comic book store and say, "Hey, this is cool. They should make a video game out of this." It's like, always with the video games, okay? Yeah, that's how it was. And I remember being at home, um, going through magazines and things, and a friend of mine, his name is Clay, not a friend of mine, a friend of my brother's, came by, and my brother was older. I'm the youngest. My brother was talking, and he goes, "Hey, Benjamin, show Clay what you've been doing on the computer." I didn't know really who Clay was. I knew him, but I didn't know what he was about. And he starts looking at my code and stuff, and he's like, "Hey, this is pretty good. Okay, I'm going to bring you something later." Like, all right, whatever. Couple days later, Clay shows up again, and he's got 2 boxes of software. He's like, "This is C, this is Pascal. These are 2 programming languages. You're going to want to get out of this whole Quick Basic thing." Quick Basic came pre-installed, and it was easy, simple, whatever. And I was like, "Oh, there are other languages." I just kind of ran with Quick Basic
Mhm.
because he's like, "Yeah, there are other languages." Showed me C and Pascal. Once again, mind blown. I was like, "Hold on a second. You can do things that can actually crash the computer?" Just that level of control. Like, no, no, if I type this in and somebody goes and double clicks on it, it will crash the computer. And then I'll know somebody's been on the computer. I was like doing things like that, right? So it was just another mind-blowing opening experience. And from talking with him, because I was like, wait a minute, you can do this and this. And he's like, yeah, yeah. And he's in technology too, which is why he had extra copies of C and Pascal sitting around.
Mhm.
So that was another bridge. And it's like, okay, with this bridge, I can really start taking things to the next level.
You go to college, and is that your major? Is it like video game design? Because the industry is probably pretty new at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that an actual major at this juncture?
No, it's not an actual major. I was at Florida A&M University, and they had computer information systems, which is
Okay.
it's not computer engine. There was basically computer engineering and information systems at the time. In
Mhm.
engineering, basically, I ended up getting the same deal with my professors that I got with my parents. It's like, hey, listen, if I get good grades, will you leave me alone? And they're like, yeah. It's like, okay, there's a computer lab down there. I can do my thing down there, right? It's like, yeah, just talk with the administrators and we'll help you out. I'm like, all right, but you'll leave me alone if I make good grades.
Okay. Well, once you get into the video game industry, what surprises you the most?
Um, so I got in. What surprised me the most was how the lack of structure. And I should have known this from trying to get in, but I was sending and people this doesn't sound like a lot today, but it actually is. I was sending 7 fully customized resumes and cover sheets and, full on information packets, like printed up with a new resume for every company and would send it to 7 companies a day. I was doing this for several weeks, just sending out these information packets. I'd apply online and send them the packet. So the packet was like, "Hey, you should have gotten my recommendations, my information, my tactics," and they'd probably be like, "Oh, we got a packet here. Let's see." They say they're already in the computer, and it was just a physical touch and the digital touch, right? So
Mhm.
it really put me over, and that's what surprised me about the game industry, how lax it was. How I don't want to say lax, but free form and build what you want and try things out, mess
And
up, fail, fix it, keep going.
right. So I guess there's not a lot of barriers stopping you. As far as you want to go, you can go as far as you have the talent and the will to go. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Well, okay, barriers would be like, you're trying to get to a castle and there's a gate and then there's two gatekeepers out in front with spears and you're like, okay, there's an obvious barrier, that's a gate.
Hmm.
Now, the video game industry kind of barriers were just like, hey, see way over there on the top of that hill? Yeah,
Hmm.
there's some gold. Why isn't anybody going to get it? Because there's dragons in between us, there are rocks, there's there's the abyss of destruction that, where all the snakes come out. There's just a lot of stuff in there. And you know what? Most people don't bother with it. So they go work for Motorola down there. There's a nice, easy drawbridge. All you do is go over there,
Mm.
you know, show them your shiny armor and you're in. And I'm like,
Okay. So
I'm
you
going to
got
take
to
the
have
hard
the
route.
yeah, you got to have the passion and the expertise to kind of go really go after it. I get that.
And the belief, I didn't know what would happen. Nobody knows if I get to a game studio and it goes away. It's like,
Now, I know, and from our previous discussions, you too talked about that you've done some speaking at for high schools and colleges. Tell me, how do you go about organizing your thoughts for a presentation that you're going to deliver to a high school student or a college student or anybody?
well, the first changeover in traditional thought process is instead of trying to talk to people and impart a message to someone, I come from the angle of let me talk with them. Let me draw out their wants, needs, desires, interest. Let me connect with them as a conduit. I do not want to be the center of attention. I want to take all of their thoughts, ideas, dreams, bring them to the stage or the platform and be able to say, hey, you know what? You have all this that you're already thinking about and interested in. Let me just organize it in ways and present it back to you. What do you think of that from my point of view? And then that's it's a whole dialogue opposed to I'm speaking to you. I'm speaking
I
with
like
you
that.
instead.
Right, because as sometimes as presenters and trainers, our goal isn't to come across as the authoritarian in a specific topic. It is to facilitate learning.
Yes,
And as you're saying, you want to engage with them to understand what they need, what you can help provide them with, and how you can lead them to the resources. You want to provide them with resources to initiate their own learning.
exactly. And I think just by I was actually a teacher's assistant at Michigan State,
Okay.
and that's kind of where I started picking that up. The professor was doing his thing, and every once in a while, he would do one of those 5-minute lectures where he's at the beginning of the class. Hey, everybody, you need to know this. This is awesome. This is bad. Blah blah blah. We're gonna talk about this. You should have read these chapters before. Here's my quick overview. Boom. There it goes. For the rest of the class session, I want you to listen to Benjamin as he talks about blah blah blah. I'm going to go back to my office now. If you need help, come talk to me. And I was like, wait, what? And So there were class sessions where I would basically, and a lot, this was for like reviews and things like, I've already gone over the material. Benjamin, handle the review session, make sure everybody's caught up to speed. So this got me into talking with people. I'm like, hey, why doesn't this make sense to you? And they're like, well, listen, I'm trying to make the program do this one thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, you're not at the level where you can force the program to do something you want to do in that way exactly. Oh, okay. This is why I need to learn how to use these different methods, because I'll need to be able to decide which one is better. Oh, now it makes sense. Now I have a reason to learn something.
Okay, and I get that. Now, you talked about being an assistant teacher at Michigan State, and you talked about working with different teams in a professional capacity. What are differences that you notice between students and actual working professionals? Or are they kind of the same? Or do you prepare a little differently? What do you notice the differences or even similarities between those kind of audiences?
Okay, audiences. Just want to make sure. Um, I think with students, a lot of the a lot of the preparation involved and the thought involved in speaking with them is about removing some of the shackles, removing
Mhm.
any of the barriers that they may have in place.
Well, Benji, I know and you mentioned it that you have a podcast. Why podcasting?
Um, how did podcasting came about? Because I'm always looking forward. Oh, and it's Benja, by the way, with an A on the end.
I'm sorry, Benja. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I just heard that last time. I want to pick that up. So podcasting is interesting. It was another one of those console switchovers for me. Like, I'm so used to something new coming out, and then I stop what I'm doing. It's like, okay, we're on the PlayStation. Now we got to think about mobile. How do we program for mobile? And podcasting came out. It's like, oh wow, okay. I've been thinking about email and this and that podcasting. This is interesting. And this was way back in the day when Corolla, um, and and all those cats were getting started. Yeah, uh, Tom Green too. It was like, it was janky websites and everything, but there it was. People were just posting, and some of the early podcasting stuff was raw, dude. It didn't, like, right now it's a production. Back then it was just people sitting around talking, and there were enough people like me, my friends. We come home after a week of making video games. We'd crash at someone's house, just talk noise for a little while, catch up on each other's things. And somebody said, these conversations are golden. We should record this, right? And it was just like, yeah, man, whatever. Okay. So one time I was like, screw it. Got a mic, brought my laptop, and put it down on the table in front and said, all right, we're going to record this one. And we were like, all right, whatever. We're drinking, eating chips, getting fat, talking noise. People were coming in and out of the house. It's like, hey, we're recording. Come say something. Hey, how you doing? I just came over to drop off some whatever. Shout out to blah blah blah. Can I curse? Yeah, curse. Mother, blah, blah, blah. Just like we were just being really stupid, right? And then I was like, okay, this is fun. Let's keep doing this. One day, like a couple months later, I said something at work. I forgot what it was. A friend of mine stands up and puts his arms over the cubicle. He's like, yeah, when you talk about blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, hey, man, I know we're friends, but you don't know me like that. What are you talking about? He was like, he's like, yeah, you mentioned it on your podcast. I was like, that click that I just put,
Mm,
it's like I just put something in the digital mailbox,
and
and
somebody received it, yeah,
it went
and
out and somebody
yeah,
got it and was
yeah,
responding to it. I was
right.
like,
Wow, yeah,
uh,
yeah. I completely get that. The first time I did a podcast and somebody was like, "Hey, do you do something?" I was like, "Yeah," and it was just this feeling. I couldn't believe it. Now I want to know, since you were an early adopter to it, how over time did your podcasting style evolve?
how did it evolve? Well, it was always an outlet, a way for me to just express things that I wasn't normally expressing. Um, and I think the style evolved based on what I was feeling at the time. This is where I get into my artsy bit when it's like, well, you got to express yourself and just blah blah blah. And that's what I wanted to do when I was in games. I'm no longer in games proper anymore. I'm just out here doing stuff. When I was in games, I was talking about how game developers lived. I was like, hey, listen, we're going to E3, we're doing this and that. It's really fun meeting all these people. Game developer, this is how we live outside of the office. That's kind of what that was. So I was always just channeling my expressions. And I continued to do that to this day. I've started up and stopped a lot of podcasts. I'm not trying to do a forever podcast. Um, but that's kind of how it is, just kind of what I'm feeling for that season.
I understand you are an author. Do you want to tell the people the name of your book?
Absolutely. So podcasting, interestingly enough, led to me writing. I was
Well,
talking a lot of
yeah, let's talk about that. How so? How so? Or were you going, or is that where you were going?
that's
How
where I
did
was going.
okay, all right.
So doing the podcasting, and at one point, several. Let's see, it was pandemic time, going into before the pandemic, even just a little bit before that. I was starting to really crank on these ideas, just ideas about everything. Like, look, man, things are moving fast. We got TikTok, we got Instagram, we got Snapchat, we got all this, and just put people just information just flying everywhere. So I'm like, okay, I gotta really start getting my thoughts out and putting more stuff out there. And I started doing these podcasts and writing notes, and it became a thing. I was like, write this down, write that down, this idea, that idea. I'd get on live. I went on Instagram live for like 180 days straight. Every day I was just like, hey, I'm on live, blah, 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 talking noise because I'm trying to get stuff out there. Why? I don't know. It's just the vibe of the time. That's what we're doing right now. Let's go live. So I'm putting all this stuff out there, getting all these ideas, and I started having needing to capture those ideas because having them digital is one thing, but I noticed that when I had an idea, it was there's this visceral connection that you make with writing something down. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. I had to stop, clear my mind, focus, organize my thoughts into structured language,
Mhm.
create the glyphs and the symbols necessary to put it out onto paper. Once it's on paper, I've given that idea, that thought, some structure, and now it exists. It's a way of manifesting a thought, the very first step in manifesting thoughts. So I was like, okay, I'm onto something here. And I just kept doing it as a practice.
Okay.
So I would, and I have several what I call them jot books here. It's just where I keep different
I
things.
like it.
Um, and I would just keep writing down all of these thoughts. And then at some point, somebody was like, "Hey, listen, what are you doing next? What's going on? What's going on with you? What's happening?" I'm just like, "I don't know. I'm just writing down thoughts." And they were like, "What do you mean?" I'm like this. And they were like, "That's cool. You write down your thoughts. You're very organized. It's flowing. It's your mind seems calm." It's like, yeah, I had an argument. I wrote down some thoughts about it, structured it, and put the book over there. The idea is not in my head anymore. It's not causing me pain anymore. It's kind of over there. When I want to go think about it, I'll go get that jot book and go through the notes. So that person was like, wow, that's really cool. You should do more with that. So I started telling more people about it, and they were like, yeah, this is not journaling. It's a way of putting down your thoughts. And like, what are you gonna do with this? I don't know. I should write a book. But what's funny is I was writing a book about other stuff, not about jotting down your ideas and thoughts, but then it wasn't working out. And then I went back to my art essence and was like, you know what? You experience things and you express them. What are you actually experiencing? And I'm like, the true experience is me understanding and realizing what I'm writing down, how my thoughts are flowing, and this whole interconnection between me and my own thoughts. What if I wrote about that?
Mm.
And this process I call Jot Booking actually turned into a book called Jot Booking. So you were asking about the book. Yeah, the book is Jot Booking, and it came about because of my Jot Booking. So it's like, yeah, I just wrote down everything I was thinking. Like, hey, I had a thought about this. That's an interesting process. Let me write that down. That can go in the book.
Yep. And as a speaker, and large part of speaking is about storytelling. And when aspiring speakers or people come to me, they always say, "Where do I find material to speak? Where do I find material?" And I always tell them, your life, everything around you. Like, you should have something, a mechanism, app, something where almost everything that you see, you jot it down. You jot down your notes, you jot it down, you write it down. You don't have to fully write it out, but right, start taking inventory of all your experiences. Start Jot Booking everything around you, and then you can go back there and flesh things out and make them into something that's attractive, something that's unique, something that is compelling for people to listen to or to watch. And
Yeah.
since you're talking about Jot Booking, I'm interested then in your process from the mental to just on paper, then the actual organization into it to something such as a book. How do you organize once you get it written down on canvas into something that's maybe a viable story or whatever message that you're attempting to convey?
Well, one of the concepts with job booking is that you're not trying to control and,
Mm,
really plan out your thoughts. You listening and you're sensing your own thoughts. So there's a slight separation that does take a bit of practice, but it becomes easier over time. There's a slight separation between the thoughts you have and your conscious self with those thoughts. And most of our life we've grown up thinking that they're one and the same, but no, you're actually separate from your thoughts. You may have a thought that says, somebody cuts you off, your body says, hey, swerve out the way, then curse at them.
mhm.
But that might not be you. That may be just because you had a bad day, you hadn't had your coffee yet, and you were a bit jittery.
Okay.
So you have to be able to step back and say, wow, I had all those thoughts, but that's not necessarily me. Hold on a second. So the process starts to become, hey, listen, these thoughts are flowing around in my head. Let me step back, grab that one, capture it, grab that one, capture it, put it down on paper, put that one down on paper. This is a song, so let me make a voice memo out of it on my phone. This one's, an image, so let me go to my whiteboard and just scroll down an image. Let me jot it down. And you're starting to see and recognize all these thoughts. Then time passes, a day, an hour, month, whatever. You look back at that thought, you're a different person. So you can see this thought differently. And you're like, okay, I had these five thoughts. Four of them make perfect sense. This other one can go, and you scratch it off. It's like, whatever, that's just a dumb thought. I didn't need that. That
Okay.
wasn't the thought that's going to lead me where I want to go. And you start putting them down and you start learning from yourself, basically. Like, while I was working on the book, writing it, I couldn't spend too much time thinking about social media. But I started keeping a special little series of books. You can see it says, social job booking two.
Mhm.
It's like, this is where I started putting media ideas. Um, like, for example, how I turn my phone habit into a way of getting good ideas out. Where it's like, okay, yeah, there's a whole social media post I can write about how I stopped picking up my phone to consume and started picking up my phone to create. That's just a
Mm.
simple little thing I can
Okay.
use for social media. But I
Right.
didn't need that while I was writing the book. So I started jotting all these ideas down and me trying to organize them. It's just that, hey, I saw so many of them, I can start funneling that energy in this direction. I suppose that is a way of organizing, but that's not the intent. The intent is to capture, direct, and release your mind to think clearly.
In your journey to get the book published, what was the biggest challenge that you faced?
Um, Realizing after week one, I would have to do the same thing at least, like 103 more weeks, you know, because I could put down a good week of work, then be like, whew, okay, that was good. And then you look at the word count, you look at what's done, you look at how much you need to edit. You're like, I probably need to do this 103 more weeks. That's 2 years, by the way, that it took me to really get this thing where I wanted it to be.
Okay. What did you learn the most from the process?
Um, I don't know if it's about writing in particular or about the subject matter. I assume it's both, but I learned the most about myself and how I think because
Mm.
it was this weird meta process about me thinking about thoughts, writing them down, and then writing a book about me thinking about thoughts and writing them down. So it was this weird kind of metacognition I had that allowed me to do a Doctor Strange and kind of step out in the astral plane and look at myself doing things. Um, that changed a lot for me. It's like I can relate to people better now because I can better step away. So that was the biggest thing.
An aspiring writer, someone who wants to take their experiences, not necessarily job booking, but wants to take their experiences and put them into a book. What is a prime piece of advice that you would give them?
Flow. Whatever you can do to flow with your thoughts in some coherent way, do that. Whether it's whether it's locking yourself in a room on a Friday night when all your friends are out partying or whatever, or whether it's, walking to a coffee shop every other day and then, just typing out your words, maybe use a laptop or something. Find your flow in terms of getting your ideas out and in some tangible form. Doesn't necessarily have to be on paper. It can be voice transcriptions. It can be, on your laptop, your Apple Notes program or whatever. Just get into a flow of putting your words out in some type of format.
Okay, I get that completely. Now, you've had a very extensive career full of lots of changes, different passions. How would you sum up who Mr. Benja is?
Creator of the new and the interesting. And I haven't done that on a large scale. Like, I haven't developed an iPhone or anything like that. But everywhere I go, I'm interested in making something new and interesting. And that's how I ended up being the lead designer on table tennis. Nobody at Rockstar was trying to make a table tennis game at the time. I mean,
Okay.
that didn't even make any sense, right? Um, it's just wherever I've gone, it's been about, hey, what if we did this? What if we try that? Yeah, everywhere I go, man, I create something new and interesting. Yeah, it's fun that way for me.
I love it. So, good sir, where can the people find you if they were looking for you?
You can find me and everything I'm doing starting with mrbenja.com, MRBENJA.com.
Okay. And where can we find Jot Booking?
Same place, mrbenja.com. Just go there. I make sure I link to everything. I've got my socials there as well. So if you want to hit me up on Instagram, my Facebook page, or wherever else, I put it there.
Okay, and we will be sure to include that in the show notes. It's been a pleasure, good sir, talking to you. This has been a very fascinating conversation. Any final thoughts you want to give to the people before we head out?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention something about this book. As I said, it's not what I've created. I didn't create this because I necessarily wanted to. I was compelled to. I think we've got a lot of I think we got a lot of struggles going on with our thoughts right now. I know I did, and there's so much happening, so much to remember, so much to consider. Something about this climate has our thoughts a bit jumbled up and not
Okay.
as effective and flowing and calm and relaxed and enjoyable. We should enjoy our thoughts, right? And it's as enjoyable as we would like them to be. So I wrote this book as a service. I want job booking to be something that people do in order to ease their mind, relax, try to optimize their mental flow a little better. And it's an easy, simple topic. The basic idea have one or two many ideas in your head, jot them down and go about your life. But we're dealing with thoughts, so there's a lot to that. And I
Mm.
just wanted to make a book that really spoke to what you may be feeling in this modern era with all this information, all this noise, and all these thoughts. That's really what it's about.
And I love to hear that. And you're right. A lot of interesting things are going on in the world, and we've got a lot in our minds that are going on. And I love the idea that you provided kind of a blueprint of how to handle those thoughts and get them down and get them into the universe, how to effectively protect our mental health. I think
Yes,
that's a service that you're doing, and I appreciate that.
absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Well, hello, everybody out there in the universe. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as I always like to say, please remember to be your best, to be inspired, to be great. We'll talk to you all later. Bye, everybody.